Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to a new video. In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a little bit of a tower defense thing that I'm working on, a little project that I'm messing around with. But what I thought is missing from my channel is how to follow splines. So one thing that you might want to do, not necessarily just for a tower defense game, is you might want an actor or a mesh or something to follow an exact route through your game. You might want it to go backwards and forwards if that's what you desire. But it's not uncommon for us to want sort of a created route through your level to be followed by an actor. Now, whether that's an NPC, which you've got to follow, there may be a spline to do that. You might use nav mesh, but that's a different video. But if you do want actors to follow a spline, this is what I'm going to focus on. So a quick example of what I'm going to do here is, as you can see, what we've got is I've got a spline obviously going around the map, and I've set up a sort of spawner, if you will, which is spawning waves of enemies for my tower defense game, and they're going to follow this spline exactly. Now, obviously, you'll see here that I've got some basic towers set up, but obviously I'm not going to cover those, and they're looking for targets and they're going to attack them. But you can see that these actors are following this spline exactly. They don't deviate at all. It is very precise. And this is basically what we're going to go through. So, let me stop talking about it and let's crack on. I'll make a new project and then we'll see where to go. Okay, so instead of creating a new project, I've just created a new level, just a little bit simpler. So let's get started. So the first thing is I'm going to open up my content drawer, and I'm just going to go back to my content folder, and I'm just going to create a new folder just for a few of these things. So I'm just going to call this YT, just for YouTube, just for me. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create an actor. Now, the first thing that I'm going to create is actually a spawner. So I'm going to create the spawner, but we're just going to create the spline that the enemies are going to follow first. So I'm going to call this BP underscore monster enemy spawner. Just like that. And we're going to open that up. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a spline. Just like that. And I'm going to hit compile. So very simple to start with. Open up your content drawer. Drag your enemy spawner into the game. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift this off the ground just a bit. Let's see what this is. Up to about 50. Just so it's not touching the floor. Because when we do spawn enemies on this, we don't want them to spawn into the floor. Because that wouldn't look good at all. Okay, so if you've never used splines before, I'll just explain a little bit. So if you grab the very first spline point, this will effectively be the anchor. Everything will move around with this. And then when you grab the second one, obviously this is currently the end point. You can move that around, and you get these little tangent points that when you move those, you actually create the bend. Now, before you start bending it, grab the main point, and if you hold the Alt key on your keyboard, you can drag with this transform, and you'll see that you've actually created another dot, or another spline point. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to create a few of these. Just going to wiggle them around, just so I've got a bit of a path going through. So you can imagine this is like a guide around some obstacles if they were here. If you imagine some cubes, or if you imagine like a typical tower defense game, this might be the path that the enemies might follow, which is going to be similar to my case. So now we've got that, that's fine. Now, what we should do is we should probably make an enemy to spawn so we can get it to move along. So let's do that. Open up your content browser, right click, create a blueprint class, pick actor, BP underscore, I don't know, ball, for example. Open up that. I'm going to add a sphere collider, or sphere collision. And then underneath that, I'm going to add a sphere. So just add that, just like that. I'm going to change the size of the sphere down to like 0.5, just so it's not absolutely massive. And just for this video, I'm going to change it to green, just so it stands out. I might just reduce the sphere radius of the collider, just so it looks a bit more tidier, a bit closer to it. It's not really big. The reason you might want this is, depending on what you're doing, you can detect whether you've bumped into something or if it's been hit by a projectile. Maybe you are making a tower defense game and you shoot it, you might want it to be destroyed. So it's just really handy that you get this in early, and that's pretty much it. On the actual sphere itself, I am going to go down and turn its collision to no collision. I don't want it to sort of bump into anything. Obviously, you can do that if that suits you, but for me, I don't want it to collide with anything. But I want the collider to sort of detect things for me. So I'm going to keep that on overlap. Okay, so I'm messing up my viewfinder now. So I'm happy with that at the moment. I'm just going to rename the sphere collider to collider, just so the variables are slightly different. Okay. One thing we should do before we move on. Now, at some point, this enemy is going to be following our spline. So it'd be good if we create a variable for the reference that we're going to need to basically to tell it this variable spline. I'm going to assign you later, so don't worry about it. But when you do get a reference, I want you to follow this spline. So let's add that and let's call this spline to follow, or just spline, it's up to you. And this is going to be of type spline component. So spline component object reference. Now, what's important is that we have instance editable and expose on spawn. This will allow blueprints from outside this ball to see this variable so we can assign it. So we're pretty much done with the ball for now. Let's just go back over to our spawner and over into the event graph. Okay, so I'm going to delete everything except the event begin play. I'm going to create a custom event and I'm going to call this start spawner. Okie dokie. And what that's going to do is it's going to run a timer by event. Whoops, timer by event. A timer by event is something that can be re-triggered over and over and over. So what we can do is we can say, let's say every second we want to loop this. So every second, what it's going to do is it's going to trigger this event. So let's do another custom event from this, and we're going to do spawn ball, just like that. So now what we're going to do on the event begin play is we're going to start the spawner. So I'm going to do it on event begin play. You can set it up however you want. You might want to set up a delay so it doesn't start immediately. Let's do that actually. Let's set up a delay just so we can be ready for when it starts. So let's add 3 seconds. Let's move these over just like that. If you select everything and press Q, it'll align them. Yep. So spawn ball. What we're going to do. So obviously we're going to spawn an actor. So if we select the spawn actor from class, we can tell it which class we want to spawn. Obviously we've just created the BP ball. So I'm going to look for that. So BP ball. There we are. So you may have noticed, if you've ever spawned an actor before, you'll recognize spawn transform, collision handling, and the investigator. But we've now got this spline to follow. Now that's because we set it to an exposed variable. So that'll be this one that we ticked expose on spawn instance editable. I said those the wrong way around, but yep. We can now tell this ball, right, you've just been spawned, and please follow this spline. Which spline are we going to do? Well, it's going to be the one that we've created in our spawner. So let's drag our spline, bring it over here, make a reference, and then plug it in just like that. Now, because these are the same type, so this is a spline component, and because we're expecting a spline component, we can connect these two together. If you get any issues, there's a chance that either this is your variable that you set up on your ball was the wrong one, or you might be using like a spline mesh actor or something like that. I think that's what the other one was. Yeah, so a spline mesh. It's not quite the same. Great. So what we're going to do is we're going to spawn a ball. Hit compile. Oh no, there's an error because we need to tell it where to spawn. So what we can do is also we can say on this spline, let's find out where the first point is. So let's get the location at point. So there we go. So get location at spline point. Let's just drag this down here. Drag this over here. If you double click on a line, you can put a reroute node and just make it look a little bit tidier. And we need to plug this into here. So we could convert it to a transform, or what we can do is right click on the transform and split it. Connect the return value from the spline point into the spline, the transform location. We can keep rotation as 0 and we can keep the scale as 1. If you have the scale as anything other than 1, it'll either make it bigger or smaller. 1 is just whatever it was when it was made. And the rotation, you can set that up if you want, but it's probably best off making your actor face forward so it spawns the right way around. Anyway, that's pretty much it. We might just need to change the coordinate space to world on this spline point. But that's pretty much it. So the spline's connected. Our ball is going to spawn. Let's test it out. So go back to your map, hit play. I don't know where the spline is. Oh, there you go. So a ball has just spawned into existence. And obviously at this point, every second there's a ball spawning on top of itself every time. But there's nothing that I can do about it at this point. What I am going to do, just so I don't get lost every time, I'm just going to add something random into the world. So let's just pop this over here, just like that. So I know that that is the rough start point. Just like that. Whoa. Okay, so that's roughly my start point. And to be honest, where's my begin player? Do I have a big... I don't have a begin player, and that's why I'm spawning just anywhere it wants. So that's going to happen now. Okay, so let's get this ball to start moving. Let's go over to the event graph. So obviously, when this ball starts to exist, there's nothing going on. Nothing happens. So what we need to do is we're going to use the tick, because we're going to say, let's update this constantly. What we need is where's my current distance and what's the speed I'm going to travel at. So let's create two variables. First variable is going to be distance, and the second one is going to be speed. And these want to be both floats, so change them to floats, just like that. And now you could, if you want, set your speed to instance editable and expose on spawn. What that'll allow you to do is if we right click on this spawn ball actor and refresh, you'll see that the speed is now something that you can control from the start. So when you spawn it, you can say, I want this to be 250. There you go. So everything that'll spawn now will be 250 speed. Obviously, you can set it up where it changes depending on what it is, but I'll leave that completely up to you. But if you want to set the speed at this point, you can do by exposing its variable. Let's leave that as it is. Okay, so distance. Distance is currently set to 0, which is absolutely fine. Let's rename that subtly, actually, to distance along spline, just like that. Now, what we want to do is we want to set this, and we want to sort of slowly change it. So let's grab our speed, get our speed. We want to times our speed by delta seconds. So this will keep it in line with the frame rate. So if you're on like a 60 frames per second machine or a 10 frames per second machine, it will somewhat appear the same. Relative to your performance, obviously. Okay, so our speed times delta seconds. And then what we want to do is we want to take our current distance and add this to it. So our current distance plus our speed equals our new distance. So effectively what we're doing is we're slowly increasing this distance by our speed amount. Okay. So we've also got a spline to follow, so let's get that. And let's get, I think if we type in distance, location at distance along spline. Okay. And then we're going to pass in that distance along the spline, and that's going to spit out a location. And then what we want to do is we also want to set our actor's location to that. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're saying, right, this is our spline, and we want to get the location at a distance. So let's go back to the map. So let's say that the starter here is 0 and the end of here is 100. So incrementally we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. So as we increase the distance, that's going to equal a different location. Now, because we are using the speed and delta time, this is going to be nice and smooth. We're going to incrementally increase this distance nice and smoothly. But every tick, every update we do, so we're going to increase it slightly, change our location, increase it slightly, change our location. So it's going to smoothly follow that line. Let's hit compile, let's play, and let's see what happens. Whoop. Whoa, okay. So we're spawning, so that's good. But for some reason we're right over here. Why are we all the way over here? Have I messed up my locations here? Where? What I'm going to do, I think it's me. Player start. Whoops. Hang on a minute. Player start. Let's grab one of those. Because I think what is happening is I spawned all the way over there then, and it looked like I was miles away. Let's hit play now. Okay, so they're still all the way over there, which is very bizarre. I think I know what it is. I forgot to change the coordinate space to world. So it's using local space. However, local space is being set as the actor's world location. So it's not quite the same. Change this to world. And then if we play now, we should get something that looks right. There we go. So my mistake. Sorry about that. So make sure you select your coordinate system to world. And as you can see, every second a ball is spawning and it's following this exact route. Now obviously what you can do is you can say this spline is going to have a total distance. There's going to be a maximum length of it. And conveniently that's under a length sort of function. So we can get the spline's length. Just add a quick reroute node in there just to make it look a bit nicer. So this spline length is effectively how long is it in total. Now we can say if our distance along the spline becomes greater than or equal to, I wouldn't ever do equal, because if for any reason, let's say you're adding 2 to your distance every time. So it goes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on. Let's say for whatever reason your spline length is 13. So it's going to go 10, 12, 14, and it's never going to be 13. So if you use greater than, it's always going to capture it. I see this coming up quite often where people will wait for an exact number, but for some reason, something in the maths doesn't quite work out and it never gets to that exact number, but it becomes greater than it and you miss it. So if you use a greater than, that's a good way to do that. Obviously, anybody who's a veteran in Unreal will know that already. But we can do, if the spline length, or sorry, the distance along it becomes greater than our length, we've got a problem. You know, that means our ball is at the end. Now, for me, in a tower defense game, this might be where I then go deduct health from the player, you know, or something else. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do destroy actor. Nice and simple. It'll get to the end. And just for effect, we'll do a print string. And we'll chuck in a message saying, lose health. Yep, I don't have a health system, so that's that. Hit play. So obviously, we've covered really what we're going to do now. We're just making this a little bit better. So our actors are going to get to the end and then disappear, just like that. And this system's going to continue to work. So we're at 21 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carry on a little bit as if you were making a tower defense. I'm going to set up like a spawn count if it's going to stop. We can change it over time. So let's add to that. I've not really planned for this part of the video, so I expect a few more hiccups where I get stage fright and I start making mistakes. Okay, so our ball. I'm first going to get a drink, actually. Okay, I'm back, so let's carry on. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a sort of a spawn counter. And when it gets to that count rate, it's going to stop. And then we can set up a condition where we can continue after a set time. But we'll just really, we'll take it from here and just see what happens. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a variable called spawn count. Spawn count, just like that. And I'm going to set it to an integer because I don't need it to be fractional. So I'll use an integer because they are whole numbers. And what we're going to do is right at the beginning, when we start the spawner, what I want to do is I want to set it to 0. Every time I start a run, I want it to be 0. I've not spawned anything at this point. And then every time I spawn a ball, what I'm going to do is just drop this in here and grab a reference. Let's just pull this down a little bit. I'm going to grab my spawn count and I'm going to increment it. Now, an easy way to increment something just by 1 is ++, and you get this increment int. Pop this in. Now, every time this spawn ball is called, it's going to increase my spawn count by 1. So I'm already counting how many things that I've spawned. And what we can do after that is we can create another variable and say spawn limit. And what I'm going to do is hit compile. And I'm going to set my spawn limit to 10. For example, so we want to make 10 and then no more. Let's load for this video. Actually, 10 might be a bit too much, so let's do 5 just to keep the video length down. Spawn limit, let's get that. Now what we're going to do is get our spawn count as well, and we want to say, well, if our spawn count becomes greater than or equal, greater than, so then you can capture it just in case something goes unexpected. So if it becomes greater than or equal to our spawn limit, and this happens to be true, so use a branch, we need to stop this timer from functioning. So let's pop this over here. Now, what you could do, you could drag this all the way over here and say clear and invalidate. Clear and invalidate is basically stop and reset yourself. We could do that. Or what we can do is on the timer by event, grab the return value, promote this to a variable and call this spawn timer handle, because this is a handle. Now, effectively, anything that I can pull off this timer and set I can now do with this variable. So to make it a bit nicer, drag this over here, get. What we're going to do is we're going to clear and invalidate. Oops, invalidate. Very good. So what's going to happen is we're going to run and we're going to get to this spawn limit. So let's hit play. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then no more. So our wave, if you will, for a tower defense, we've now created sort of a wave. So that was our first wave. Now you might want to have a bit of a timer at the end of each wave just before the next wave starts. So this is just going to be a delay, and you could promote this to a variable if you want and call this wave delay. So every wave is going to have a delay of this value. 0.2 seconds is far too slow, but that was default. So let's just say there's going to be 3 seconds between waves. Obviously, I'm keeping that short for this video, but in a real wave game, you might want to give your player a bit of breathing space. You may even want to pause the round to allow them to set up new things and let them press play if you want, which then you can just set up something to trigger this start spawner. But that's up to you. I want mine to be automated. You don't get any breathing space in this. You know, it's just full-blown carnage. So after the delay, all we need to do is start the spawner again. So we're going to loop through, get to our spawn count, wait. Once the wave's complete, so what might be a good idea actually is let's just make a bit more room. I'm going to put a print string just to give us a little bit of feedback whilst we're testing it, to say wave complete, just like that. And obviously I held down the shift key for too long, but let's just go with it. Wave complete, and then we should do that. What you could also do right at the beginning, just for the hell of it, we're going to do another print string here, and we're going to say wave started. Okay, just like that. Okay, let's hit play, and we should get 3 seconds between waves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wave complete. And then there we go, straight away the next wave has started. Now obviously there are tons of ways to make this unique and difficult. What you could do is you could set up a wave count. So let's do wave count. Oops, wave count. And what we want to do, let's think about where we can put this. Every time the spawner starts, we could put this wave at the end here and increment that by 1. So we're not going to set this to 0. We're going to leave it as 0 to start with. So hit compile. Should see that that says 0 down at the bottom. So every time we start this spawner, now bear in mind this is going to trigger, get to this timer, increment this by 1, and then the timer's going to loop this one. So you don't want to put it on this one because you're going to increase your wave every time you spawn something. And let's say that every wave, what we could do, just to make it a bit nice, append. Now obviously this is just for us. We can say wave, add a new pin, drag in our wave count into that center one there like that, so we know what wave we're on. What we should probably do actually is start this at wave 1. So let me set that to 1. And then we'll put space complete like that. And then we can copy this over here. Get rid of that. Paste that in. Whoops. I'm messing this up. Let's bring that back over here. Print string. I don't know why I deleted the print string, to be honest. Again, back to my stage fright, making silly mistakes. and we'll say started, just like that. And we need a bit of a space at the beginning so it doesn't merge the words together. There should be a space there at the end. There is. Okay. Hit play. Okay, so wave 1 started in the top left. Wave 2 complete. Now that might be a little bit too quick. You might want to add a delay between this wave complete. That's completely up to you. But what are we going to do? So every time we go through and this wave count is increased, what we could do is our spawn limit, we could set our spawn limit. So it's currently 5. We could say the wave count, we don't need that, we can use this, wave count times now I've not prepared the maths for this. Wave count times 2. Let's plug that in as the spawn limit. So the first wave is going to be 1, so there's going to be 2 enemies. Then it's going to be 4. Now you can see how this will get out of hand really quickly, but I've not thought about this in advance. But we'll see what happens. So the first wave is okay, we're getting through this really quick. Every time we go through, our spawn rate is sort of like doubling every time. It's wave 4 complete. Okay. Obviously, I've not really considered that one. You could work something out. But again, what you can do is this wave-based type system. Obviously, find something that's a little bit more appropriate. You can basically set it up where you sort of increasing the amount of things that spawn each time. There'll be a way you can do it which it doesn't get overwhelming too quick and gives your character or your player some time to catch up. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a quick pause and see if there's anything I think that I can tack on. If not, we're at half an hour now, so I might end it there anyway. I probably am actually. Yeah, so I'll leave it there. I hope this video was sort of informative for somebody. Obviously, I like to mess around with lots of different projects. Obviously, I've played a couple of tower defense games recently, and I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. Let's see how I could come up with something like that. There's probably other ways of doing it. But no, there's no doubt that there's other ways of doing it. This is just my take on it. Let me know what you think. If this was helpful at all, obviously consider giving me a thumbs up or even leaving a comment just to let me know that it helped you out. If it didn't help, or if you didn't like it, or if there's something that you think I could have improved, also please leave a comment down below and just let me know what you think. Yeah, if you want to see more videos like this or any other sort of style, feel free to subscribe. If you want support on this video, any video, or anything completely unrelated to this video, but it's at least Unreal related, please consider joining the Discord down below. There's a lot of us, everyone's asking questions, and I'm usually pretty quick at responding. And obviously you can share videos and pictures there, so it's useful. Recently I've added a free resources sort of thread, so you can go on there and see some of the sort of free stuff that I've seen, and it's not just the Unreal's free stuff for the month. It's some other bits and pieces that I found on Fab or across the web in general. So it might be worth you just dropping by. You don't need to message at all, but I'm going on about that far too much now. So I'm going to leave it there. If you've got it all the way to this end, special thank you to you. You're amazing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another one. Bye.